I call this heightened feelings at springtime. You've learned how to make good food. It tastes good, it smells good, you cook it right. Only thing left to do, make it look good. Making food look good can be easy. You can certainly go down the road of multiple nozzle plating gadget tubes and different spoons. Says the guy with like 18 different spoons. Can you use ring molds? Can you use squeeze bottles? Sure, you can use all those things. Why not? If you're into it, do it. Keep it simple though. Learn the basics. So today, as a former chef, I'm gonna give you some tips on how to easily make your food look just a little bit prettier when it hits the plate. If you wanna learn to make food look good, a salad's a really great place to start, and it's easy to experiment with. Being cold buys you a little bit more time. Something that's really nice to do when you're making homemade food and want to make it taste good is to start making your own salad dressing, make your own vinaigrettes. Very easy to modify. If you make too much, well, it's gonna last forever. So I'm gonna simply mix a few ingredients that were in the condiment shelf and a little bit of fresh herb that I had in my cupboard and blend it together to make a really simple vinaigrette. But what I'm gonna do is try and make it so it also will look good when I put it down on the plate, not just taste good when I toss it with the greens. I have a bit of cilantro, but you could use parsley, basil, any other kind of softer herb that you like. And I'm just gonna roughly chop it and pop it in here. This is just a really basic green olive paste, easily found at nicer grocery stores or your local Italian market. So I'm gonna put a good heaping spoon of that olive paste in there. Have some capers as well, that nice tart, salty, brackish kind of flavor. Just gonna give them a bit of a squish. Who doesn't like preserved flower buds in their salad? And a healthy little spoon of some grainy mustard. Got a little bit of vinegar, a little red wine vinegar. You can experiment with all kinds of different vinegars. There's more than just white vinegar out there. You want to try cooking with a little bit more vinegar, I really strongly suggest you find a bottle of sherry vinegar from Spain. Milder, it has some red wine vinegar taste without that color, and it's not as harsh as white vinegar. You can totally chop and grind your salad dressing up until a smooth puree if that's what you're going for. Today I want something a little bit chunkier, so I just pulsed it to break it up and bash some of the flavors together, and then I'm gonna add some olive oil. There's all sorts of ratios, I'm sure the internet has them for you. Figure out what you like. I like the acidity in a salad dressing, so I'm gonna go on a 1-to-1 ratio of vinegar to oil. Ba-ba-da-ba. We're making a really simple salad, but we're gonna add some nice crunchy vegetables to it. A couple of little vegetables that really give you a nice pop of color and a nice bit of texture to the salad and have really cool, natural looking shapes. I really find that if you take something that's beautiful already, try not to do too much to it. For example, this fennel has this beautiful shape to it, so we're gonna let its natural shape do the work for us. I'm gonna cut the stems off here, and honestly, I think we could take some of these little fronds and just chop them up, and we'll pop them right into our salad dressing. Now, see the cross section of this fennel looks really cool. If you've watched any of the other cooking videos I've done, I'm gonna tell you to cut a flat spot, but I want the shape out of this, so I'm not gonna do that. It makes it a little trickier, but I'm just gently taking this nigiri and sliding it across. And for those of you out there saying, well, why wouldn't you use a mandolin? Yeah, go ahead, use a mandolin. Do what you need to do to get the desired result. Now we're gonna do the same thing with a couple little radishes here. If you really want to get beautiful and consistent slices of something that's nice and thin, a great plating hack is a mandolin. Just gently slide it over. Now I know people say, but how do you do it without cutting yourself? I got a secret trick for you. I stop before my fingers touch the blade. I had a teacher once, and I was doing this stuff with salad, and apparently I kept putting on really ugly looking lettuces that were all broken and shitty. And one day she said, "You like girls, right?" Yeah. It's like, when you look at girls, sometimes you look at them and you think, I want to date that one. She's good looking, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, think that way when you're picking through the lettuce. Think of a piece of lettuce that you would date and only put those ones on the plate. All right. There's not a lot to it. You've had a salad with this in it before. What we did is we started by putting the salad dressing on the plate, which gives it a bit of a frame to hold it all together. Then we put the avocado fan down there. Now, if you want to learn how to do that well, and a video I should probably watch is Nathan's video on how to cut an avocado fan. Probably gonna put it up in the corner of the screen here for you. But that's a foundation. Like with good architecture, you need that base to build on. So having that sort of solid base underneath there allows you to put that lettuce on top and starts to stack the food up a little bit. That just gives it that third dimension. Then just pile the lettuces on the top, gently, one at a time. You can grab them together as a bunch. That depends. How much time do you have? How many people are you serving? How many fucks do you have to give tonight? But you stack that lettuce up there, and then you finish it with the garnish. I always do this at home whenever I'm making a salad. I dress the leaves separately from the crunchy bits. Why? Because the leaves aren't gonna be any good tomorrow. The crunchy bits will still be fine. So if I have leftover, I can keep the leftover salad and not have to throw it all away. But I got the crunchy bits on top because they've got these nice shapes to them and different colors. I gave them just a little bit of dressing too, so nothing's on here dry. And then just for a bit of fun, a bit of savoriness, and a good bit of crunch and some saltiness, I opened up my good old trusty can of fried shallots. Crispy shallots, you can make them for sure. You can also buy them, and that was it. Sometimes when you're plating food, something falls off to the side. I believe that you could spend a lot of time making it stack perfectly, or sometimes you gotta let things fall where they wanna go. You have to let it kind of go the way it wants to go. Forcing it, you might find, doesn't get you where you want to be, and you end up just handling the food a whole bunch. This is someone's dinner, you don't want your hands all over it. I often look at food at a restaurant and think, how many times has someone touched this? So keep it simple, keep it easy, and once you start practicing this and you learn how to build the foundation with the heavier, denser thing at the bottom and the lighter thing on top, you'll start to see you can actually do it pretty quickly and end up with a good looking result. You also want to consider what you're putting in there. You want a variety of taste, texture. Sometimes you want a variety of color. Sometimes you're going monochromatic. I'm sure you can Google color theory, but having a bit of variety that gives you the foundation for the flavor as well as the texture. That'll help you build a nice plate. All right, there you go. That's your first little salad that doesn't look too bad. Dirty secret time. Half the secret to making a plate look good is how you cut it and how you prepare it. Second part of that secret is care about everything that goes on the plate. Often you just put all your effort into the steak or the thing you paid the money for. And that's great. And that thing should be done properly and it should stand out. In fact, that should be the focal point of the plate. That's the money maker. Take care of everything else around it too, and it will all come together to gather this really beautiful plate. You'll have a lot of nice little things to work with. You want shapes, you want sizes, you want colors, you want textures. Combine those things together on a plate and boom, you'll have a symphony of flavors and stuff. It'll be good, trust me. So we took some nice little veg, blanched them to get them a little bit soft and cooked into the middle. And then honestly, I hit them in an air fryer and got them real crispy and caramelized on the outside. You see they're in nice little shapes, but they're nice and small. So these things are gonna tuck in together and give me a nice little mound that I'll be able to put the fried pork chop on top of. So again, you can have all sorts of different types of vegetables in here, but when it comes to plating them, if you cut a number of things to be a similar shape and size with flat sort of sides and surfaces like that, you'll be able to mix them together and stack them up. They'll kind of become one thing. And frankly, it's a lot nicer than cutting a big chunk of carrot and eating a chunk of carrot, than eating half of a Brussels sprout to get those things together. Also boiled some parsnips until they're really nice and soft in salted water, drained them. Then I added some cream, some milk, some almond milk, even a little touch of applesauce, along with salt and white pepper. And I've put this here into a Vitamix to blitz it into absolute oblivion, which I will have an incredibly smooth puree. If you don't have a Vitamix and you're just using a regular blender, all good. But if you want to get a really smooth, very even, consistent texture, push it through the finest sieve that you've got in your kitchen, and what comes out the other side will be beautiful, very smooth. I'm gonna put this puree on the bottom of the plate, and it's gonna be a base for a couple of things. But one of the things is it's gonna be where the color starts. And so I've been very careful to only use white pepper. I like the flavor, it's a bit fermented. I don't want any little black specks in it. So the white pepper gives me that warmth of flavor that's gonna go really nicely with the sweetness of the parsnip, but it's gonna look very clean. We've pan fried this pork chop. There's nothing here but pork and salt. I salted it for several hours in advance. I made sure to pat this, the pork chop dry with a paper towel previous to frying it. It's been fried in a bunch of avocado oil and then a healthy chunk of butter. I also took a nice fresh clove of garlic and smashed it. Didn't chop it, didn't mess around, just smash it. And a little sprig of rosemary. You could use any kind of herbs really. I think the ones that are a little bit woodier, the flavor goes more into the oils. So things like rosemary and thyme are really good, so is tarragon. And then we just basted the pork chop, and that gives you this really beautiful, even golden color. Let it sit to rest. My rule for resting is 50% of the time it took to cook the thing is how long you should let it rest for. When I get into something big like a roast, like a turkey, I kind of cut that down to 30 or maybe 25%. But really, honestly, a good long rest is going to make a huge difference to the moisture, juiciness of your piece of meat. And now the last thing I'm gonna do is make a quick pan sauce, and I'm gonna do it directly in the pan that the pork chop came out of. I've poured a bit of the fat off. In fact, I put that fat into the mushrooms that we've got going here on the steak. I don't want it to be too greasy. So yeah, let's pop over and do the sauce. So making a simple pan sauce is a really valuable skill. Having a bit of sauce is very good for a lot of reasons. Taste, keeping food warm, also for presentation. So frying a piece of meat in a frying pan means a little bit of that meat is gonna stick and caramelize to the pan. We can lift that off the pan. It's a process called deglazing. You can use stock, you can use wine. I start by sauteing a little bit of onion in the pan. Shallots are also great for this. But once they're soft, we're gonna throw in some stock to deglaze it. We're gonna let it simmer for a bit, and then we're just gonna stir in little cubes of cold butter, and that together will thicken up and give us a really rich, beautiful sauce to go on top of our pork chop. When you're putting together a dinner, especially if you're trying to put together one that's a bit bigger, say you're trying to pull off 4 or 5 courses, it's great to visualize the plate, even draw it out, make a little map, and then underneath it you could write all the parts that are gonna go on it. Especially if you're trying to make a bunch of different plates for a bunch of different people, it's good to try and map everything out. It helps you keep everything together, especially as you get into the last minutes of serving food. You gotta move fast, you gotta keep stuff together. Simple drawing is all you need. It helps keep your thoughts together, so when you go to plate the food, you remember which steps to go in which order. Something that helps to make a really beautiful plate is to start with beautiful ingredients. So finding things that are in season is a great place to start. Fall time, so Brussels sprouts, carrots, parsnips, some mushrooms. Those are some of the greater things you can find right now. Starting with that, a great little pork chop. We made a puree to sit the pork chop on and kind of hold everything together. That gives it a nice base. It's a little bit like glue actually, so the vegetables don't spread around as the pork sits on top of it. So using that parsnip puree, we did the classic drop and drag. Take a tablespoon of the sauce, slop it onto the plate. Not too hard, just enough. Then I wiped the spoon off. That's important to get a nice clean drag. The bottom of the spoon's got to be clean. Then you just sort of press the spoon into your glob that you've dropped on the plate and just drag it straight across. Let it graze the plate a little bit, then you get a nice little valley. If you got a curved plate, you can follow the curve, or you can just go straight across if you want a bit of contrast. Then carefully taking a spoon of the mushrooms, I tucked them in to that puree. By that I mean, I let them slide off the spoon, but my hand was there to try to keep them in a group. I didn't just drop it down so they'd splat and bounce all over the place. That could be your style. You gotta own it though. I took another spoon of the roasted carrots and Brussels sprouts. Same thing. I didn't get a huge spoon. I didn't take a tiny spoon and get a huge amount on top. I had the appropriate amount for the spoon and slid it onto the plate. I'm also not heaping an effing ton of food onto a plate here. This is a really good tip on making something look good, is if you have more food than you have plate, it's not gonna look very appetizing. You wanna leave a little bit of the space around. Like in a picture frame, there's the matting around the outside, so it helps draw your eye towards the focal point, which in this case, your plate is the frame. The inside of your plate here, the rim, that's the matting. And then the picture is the middle. We call that white space. That white space really helps your eye get drawn to the nice thing that you've made for people, the nice thing that someone grew for you so you could make it for people. So people will care because you put effort into it. If you put a bunch of effort into something, you want it to be appreciated. Making it look good so people look at it and go, God damn, Bill, that pork chop looks real good. When you're carving a piece of meat that you've cooked and roasted and you want it to look good, rest it. Rest it not only means that the muscle fibers are going to reabsorb the juices like a sponge, it means when you slice it, those juices aren't gonna run all over the countertop and they're not gonna run all over the plate. They're gonna stay inside the meat. Before I sliced it, I just sort of made sure I knew where the bones were. And depending on what it is, say you have something like a flank steak or something with a really strong grain, you're gonna wanna make sure to cut across the grain. That way you have a nice tender, slightly more tender piece of meat to chew on. And at the very end, I just put a little sauce around the plate, trying to keep everything nice and hot. You could always start by putting the sauce on the bottom if you'd like. It's your choice. But something that's really important if you're serving hot food, you want it to stay hot. You're gonna spend a little bit more time plating the food. It's gotta go to the table. People have to look at it. They have to ooh and ah. Put your plates somewhere warm. Maybe you've got a warming drawer underneath your oven. Maybe you can just pop them in your oven quickly. Maybe you got a little shelf somewhere that's warm. If you warm your plates up, it will keep the food warmer for a long time. Your sauce will keep its nice consistency if the plate is warm. And otherwise, it'll taste like hot food because the plate's hot. It's a very subtle detail, but it actually goes a really long way. When I put the pan sauce on, I just sort of poured it in to a couple of little nooks and crannies so it was underneath. You can simply put the sauce down first. I like putting just a little bit on top of the meat, again, to help keep things warm. But I did a nice job cooking this meat, so I'm not drenching it with the sauce. You'll also notice that I didn't put a sprig of herb on here. I don't like doing that. It's not something someone's going to eat. I don't think you should put anything on a plate unless someone's gonna eat it. Why would I waste a really good piece of herb that's not cheap so I can throw it out after dinner? It seems irresponsible. You can certainly make garnishes. That's a whole world to get into. You can make little crackers with herbs in them or something and put a little piece across. Those fried shallots are great. You can do all kinds of stuff if you want to add a little crunch to your food and a little garnish. Of course, you could add fresh herbs, but I would suggest chopping them up, integrating them into the plate somehow so that they're actually edible, palatable, so they taste good, so they are part of the dish, not just a stick on top of someone's food. Recap what we did here. Start by cutting things nicely and cooking them properly. That's gonna go a long way to creating a really nice, balanced looking plate. Think about textures, think about colors, think about flavors, think about aromas. Think about your plate and what's gonna look good on it. Sketch it out first. Look at a couple of the different plates you've got in your cupboard and pick from there. And good luck. You're gonna screw it up. It's not gonna be great the first time, but the second time, the third time, you'll keep getting better. Maybe start out by doing it on a Tuesday night and practicing the drop and drag with your mashed potatoes so that when you serve a bunch of your friends on Friday, you've got it nailed. If you wanna level up your knife skills game so you can level up your plating game, hit up some of our other videos, learn some tips and tricks, and have fun.